black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Yeah, my family's from Sudan. Yeah, both my parents, born and raised there. Their brothers, their sisters, everything. My dad has 7 brothers, and my mom has like 4 brothers and 2 sisters. So we're a pretty big family. But yeah, we try to go back every often. And I don't know. Ever since I was younger, I can remember like my uncle. He's like a history maniac, so it's just like we spend like days like outside, and he'll tell us stories about like the pyramids and like all this like cultural stuff that you don't really get to hear about over here. So yeah, it's always fun. Why did I want to find out more? Basically, it's because you don't hear about it often. It's kind of a hidden side to ancient Nubia and Egypt. Well, Egypt seems to always be like kind of the front page. So I felt like it was time to like give Nubia a shine and show like all this beauty and all this culture. And it's like these countries are rich with so much, and like the pyramids and everything. So I felt like it was time for that to be displayed. The Hathor-headed pendant was definitely probably one of my favorites. And the lady. Those were the ones that stuck out to me, yeah.
Lady Senawi?
Yes, Lady Senawi. She was so poised, and like, when you look at her, you just get this queen essence, and she was radiant, and like the way her like body was sculpted, it was just so, her body was, like itself was just so beautifully made. When I look at Lady Senawi, I can like see myself as her almost. Like it was kind of like looking in a mirror. Not to say that I'm royalty, but you know, to some extent, yeah. When I first saw it like in person, it was so small and cute, and it just spoke to me in a way, which was weird because it was just so small, but like, yeah, it spoke volumes. And it was so beautiful, and like I can imagine these queens and all these other people just wearing it around their necks, showing authority. So I just see it as a big symbol of like royalty almost, yeah. When I look at the statues, it gives me this new perspective of that you don't always get to see. Because when you think of Africa, sometimes you think of poverty, you think of starving children. And it's like rare that you get to see that Africa is full of kings and queens and art and culture. Like these statues, though, they don't speak. You could still feel the essence of them in the room, and like the power that they held over people, which is like truly amazing and unbelievable. I can barely put words to it. It's unbelievable. Like how much jewelry these people would be wearing. Like from head to toe, drenched in jewelry. Like from the crowns that the kings wore on their heads with the cobras coming out. Like it symbolized, it's so much more than just jewelry or just pieces of diamonds or gold. When I see the women, these queens, being held to such a high standard, it makes me feel like a queen almost. That my little sisters are a queen, that like all the women in Africa are these Nubian queens that have like finally been put into power, and like it really warms your heart almost. That like, yes, that we're women, and like for long times you've been viewed as just objects or something, but now like we're put on the forefront, and we're what you want to look at, and we're leaders, and we're more than just these objects, you know.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Smokey Johnson, and I'd like to welcome you to this part 2 of a 2-part series that I'm doing here at the Umoja Circle. Now, for those of you who are new to the Umoja Circle, this is an African-centered talk show whose purpose is to correct errors where errors are found, and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. In part 1 of this, there was a short video that you saw of a Nubian sister, a young American sister, but of Nubian descent, rediscovering her ancient African self, as we all should do. because in the previous show, I talked about a symposium in 1974. That's how I start out the part one of this series, and you could go check it out if you want to hear what I said. But the premise of the show was that the discussion about whether the Egyptians or Kemetic people, as they called themselves, the Egyptians were black, that looked like me, okay? And it was proven, okay, by 11 scientific disciplines by two brothers. Again, this is in my first show, but I just want to reconnect to this one, because I'm going to go a little deeper. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Teofele Obenga. They were the only two blacks out of 22 or 23 scientists that were called by UNESCO. And there's the picture of these two great men that you should know about, because they definitively proved, without a doubt, that the Egyptians were black. Okay, and on the left is Dr. Diop. Sheikh Anta Diop, and he had a melanin dosage test. Again, I talk about it in the first show, so you could just refer to that to see what I'm talking about. And he's also wrote this book, one of those great scholarly works, Civilization or Barbarism, of course, in my library. And if you want to know about our people, it's in books. And what I'm going to talk about, again, as you can see, is the Nile Valley civilization. That the Nile Valley civilization is not only started in Europe, excuse me, started in Egypt, but it goes even further south, all along the 4,000-mile long length of the Nile River. Okay, I got some, again, videos and tapes, and I'm going to now introduce you to some slides to establish that what Dr. Diop and Dr. Obenga did was the truth, okay? Many of you might not be familiar with this. I have my copy. Okay, this came out in, I think, 2008. Okay, this is a National Geographic picture with this proud Nubian. Now, this is true, okay? These Nubian pharaohs did exist around the 25th dynastic period. But you got to understand, the previous show I talked about the zeitgeist and bias. Okay, when you had the genome and all these other things, and then you had this mitochondrial DNA that showed that Africans, that you could trace all humankind to Africa, and it started showing that the Africans were Egyptians, were black, okay, and of African. So they gave us the last two dynastic periods, 25 and maybe 26 of these Nubians. But that's a trick, because all the pharaohs, or Per-Ah, as they were called, Per-Ah, P-E-R-A-A, they call themselves. Pharaoh is a foreign terminology. Again, that's another thing they do, put foreign terms and to confuse the water, okay? The first founding, I'm going to show in this show the founding generation, the first dynastic period, not just the last one, which came to Nubia, and they want to show that that the Egyptians were some other race other than these guys. So this is a trick. The first people who came into what is now Egypt came from where this brother's at the beginning, and they were, in fact, their heritage is even longer. He was just the tail end of the dynastic period of his cousin. What they're doing is, for example, they're saying, which is crazy, the people that look like him, like when Germany invaded France, okay, it's like saying the Germans were white, but the French weren't. Because what he did and his fellow Nubian pharaohs at the 25th dynastic period, when you're old and 3,000 or 4,000 years old, that like Egypt was at that time, okay, he was like 600, 700 BCE, this was, but Nubia was Egypt was thousands of years old at that time. And they had bad rulers, invaders, and other people taught to take over. All the invaders who were kings or Purahs of Egypt were black, and a lot of them associate themselves to Nubia. Let's get that straight, okay? And he and his family went over there to set things right, to bring it back to where it was when they came into prominence as pharaohs, okay? And they give us this one, but no, I want to tell you the story goes back even longer. Let's see what the Egyptians talk about, the people to the south, where we talk about Nubia, where he came from. The Egyptians called themselves Kemetu, and their land Kemet. The word Kemet means the black land. Their name Kemetu means literally the blacks. That's who we are. We're black people. They use the word Kenti for people who live south of them in Africa, the Nubians, okay, and Kush and Ethiopia. It is the same word for first, foremost, origin, beginning, and so forth, okay? That's what the Egyptians saw their origin story for. That's who they were in awe of. Let's go on to the next one. One of the words for inner Africa that the Egyptians used was Yah, meaning old or ancient. Is the same as their word for old, making inner Africa the old country of origin. That's what they said about the south of them. Inner Africa also was known as Tarneta, the land of the gods. So they were in awe of the people in the south. The people like that where that brother came from in that magazine, the Egyptians who were a high civilization were in awe of those folks. And you got to understand the oldest human beings came with 200,000 years or 400, from between 200 to 400,000 years, I've heard, where Homo sapiens sapiens, people that look like all human beings on this planet, like us, was from that eastern portion of Africa, south of Kemet. And the Nile River, okay, or the Nile Valley, like in this book here, Nile Valley Civilization was an ancient civilization. Humankind walked and learned and had concepts that made it to its highest point in Egypt and in Nubia. But prior to that, all these things, pyramids are found in Kush, in Nubia. To this day, there are hundreds of Nubia. There's more pyramids in Nubia, or what was known as Nubia, than that is in Egypt today. Okay, but all that's ignored, and we're still conditioned to believe that the Egyptians were some other group or aliens or whatever nonsense. No, they were African people who've been around for hundreds of thousands of years to develop science and mathematics and all that put the Europeans in awe when they saw, at first came into what is known as Egypt, or Kemet, or Egypt as they call it, which is a Greek name. But it came from the south. Okay, the ancient ones, the land of the gods. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, this talks about the National Geographic. That's that book that came out. It was in February 2008 that this article, this National Geographic magazine came out of. Let's go on to the next one. But also to tell you how devious things are. On March 1st in 1979, the New York Times lived up to its slogan, all news that fits the print, right? When it featured a cover story of earth-shaking significance. The article was written by Bryce Reisenberg, a science writer for the Times, and was entitled, Ancient Nubian Artifacts Yield Evidence of Earliest Monarchy. That's earlier than Egypt. Okay, that's south of Egypt, in Nubia. This article recounted the archaeological discovery of the late archaeologist Dr. Keith Seeley, who served as the director of the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute Nubian Expedition. And this happened in 1962. But the information, he kept this this information to himself, and it didn't come out till he died in 1977, and his partner, another scientist who went with him, because since he was the director, this other guy couldn't do anything. Came and told the world about the discovery. Let's go on to the next one. This now, that exhibition happened in 1962. There was a reason why. If you go to Egypt now, in the city of Aswan, which is in Egypt, close to the Nubian border. What was the Nubian border? You'll see the Aswan Dam, and Lake Nasser is the lake that filled up. And this started back in 1960. That's why they rushed in 1962, because there were temples and all kinds of sites, archaeological sites, that would be flooded and underwater, which they are now. And they the Oriental Institute of Chicago sent professors Keith Seeley and Bruce Williams, who was the other gentleman, to this, and where they found in a city called Kastul, a Nubian city, they discovered pre-dynastic birthplace of the pharaonic civilization. They saw evidence of the pre-dynastic birthplace of the Egyptian pharaohs in the ancient Nubian city of Kutsul. All this is in writing. Okay, this is the news article that came out. But Keith Seeley kept it secret, and it was Bruce Williams who opened that information out to the world after he died. Keith Seeley died in 1977. Let's go on to the next one. Now, this is one of the 5,000 articles that they found. It's a incest birder, okay, and it had along the side. The drawing will show you a little bit clearer what was on the side. It showed, the white crown, which is the symbol of the the southern Egypt. Okay, it was called the Tulan, Tarnesi. All right, Tulan, and they had different crowns. One was a red one for the north, going towards Cairo, and one for the south, and the cataract. There's 7 cataracts, okay, and it was split into 2 lands. And you had the falcon, which is the symbol of Horus, okay. You had the king, or the Per'ah there. You had again the falcon symbol, and you got the palace, or the big house. That's what it means. Per'ah means great house, okay. That's what the foreigners try to say when they use the word pharaoh or great house, too. Right? But this is an incense burner. They found out of the 5,000 pieces of artifacts that they took out before the flooding of the Lake Nasser took out that part of Nubia. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, there's a close-up of look at one of the images that was on that incense burner. Okay, you see that top hat, that crown that he's wearing is significant because that's the same crown you find in Egyptian kings. Okay, and let's go on to the next one. Okay, one of the quotes of Sheikh Anta Diop that I want to bring forth. This is a brilliant man. He was our Einstein. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop emphasized the necessity of studying Nubian languages for understanding Nile Valley history in his book, The African Origins of Civilization, Myths or Reality. That's the other book. That's I have in I couldn't find it, but it's in my library somewhere. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Like I said in the earlier last show, that language is a witness and a record of the progress of a people through history. If you understand the language and they're writing their language, whoever writes on the page will shape the thinking of an age. And our ancestors wrote. This is the language of the Nubians, one of the earlier languages. There's other ones, but this is one spoken even to this day, is Nobin, okay, N-O-B-I-I-N. Okay, and in the Nubian language, to show how the connection to that lightning bolt is what they would call Heru Philae, meaning the Ark of Heru. Heru is one of the Egyptian gods. Okay, he's the son of Osiris, in the Greek language and Isis in the Greek language, or the Roman language, and other known as Horus, but it's Heru, Aset. You know, these are the language of the people that established this concept. And I want you to understand that it came from the South. It didn't come from Italy. It did not come from some Asiatic part northwards. That's the bias that I talked about in the first show that tried to keep on putting everything close to Europe because they could not accept the fact that the people that they were enslaving, when all these concepts started coming out, they had to justify that slavery. So we were no history, no kind of historical aspect, no way of thinking. We were just savages. But we created the earliest monarchy, all right, was in Nubia. Let's go back. Let's go. The language shows that. Okay, even the origin of the word Nile is a Nubian word. The word Nile is derived from the Nubian language, Nubian, which means to drink. You know? Nile, I think it's pronounced. I heard a Nubian speaker say that. Okay, to drink. Let's go on. Everything from the South, even the concept of the Trinity. This is the African thing. Okay, on the left, you know, you have the divine Trinity of Amun-Ra, Father, Asar, Mother, Aset, or Isis, Son, equal daughter, Heru, Horus. That's the foundation, the core of the Trinity is the family. All things come from that. You know, when you create a child, when you create a baby, everything around you comes from the ideas of a human being. Every building, every idea comes from that. But you can't create that without that family. You need the mother, you need the father. And from that you produce the child. And from that comes everything else. And also through the woman, all of history. That's why you honor the woman, because all civilizations come through her. And that's a sign of Hathor, another one of the deities that come from the south that's also incorporated in the Egyptian pantheon of gods. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Nubian is prominent in Sudan and Egypt and the most widely spoken Nubian language as to today. All right, now let me stop there for a second. The word Sudan came about in 652 when the Arabs invaded. First they invaded Egypt in 641. Okay, they were asked to come in by the Nubians to get rid of the Romans, because the Romans were still occupying Egypt for many centuries. You know, that's after Julius Caesar and Mark Antony in that period of time, around 650 or whatever BCE until around the 600s. It was the northern Egypt was occupied by the Romans. And if you wanted to find a book that'll talk about that part of Africa, northern Africa, and how it was influenced by the Romans, here's a book that comes, Roman Africa. It talks about that period of time until they got rid of the Romans in 641. And then 10 years later, the Arabs conquered both Egypt, and then 10 years later, they conquered Nubia. And then they changed the name from Nubia to Sudan. So Sudan is where Nubia used to be. And Nubia means in Arabic, the black lands. Huh, how convenient, all right? But Nubia, this Nubian language origins dates back to 2,500 years BC or earlier, okay? In fact, the Nubian monarchy goes back even longer, because the earliest, according to Manetto, who gave the dates of these pharaohs, I think it's earlier, but he did. But he was under when the Greeks were running Egypt at the time. But the first dynastic period for Egypt started in about 3000 BCE. But the Nubians were even older by at least 800 years more earlier, okay? But this language, Nubian, came out of an earlier Nubian language, but it's been around since 2,500 years BC, okay? And I even want to show that there is a resurgence, just like that young lady at the beginning of this video, to show that there are people who are trying to, just like people are trying to learn Metu Neter, which is the hieroglyphs for the Egyptians. There are people who try to rediscover their ancient Nubian language, because when the Arabs came in, like they do, they took over. They changed people's names, excuse me, from their ancient Nubian names and forced them to take more Arabic names. They didn't want Nubians to speak their ancient language, even though they're still doing it. But that was what the Arabs brought to the table. When they went into Egypt in 641, they started stripping those limestones from the pyramids, okay, destruction, to build what we now know. The only thing that they really built of significance in 641, when the Arabs invaded Egypt, was Cairo, all right? And then in 652, they went further south to invade, and that's what we have, the country of Sudan. And today, those folks who of Arab descent are telling us that, when we say that the people of that time, in ancient time, were black, how dare you, because that's our heritage. No, they were invaders. This is fact, and this is known. And I want to show you this, that the Nubians on the left, this was in the pharaoh, or the pharaoh, Seti I. He's the father of Ramses II, the great Ramses II. But in his tomb, you got this painting, this picture with these colors. On the left is the Kemite, or Kemetic people. In the middle is the Indo-European that they try to say, the Egyptians might have been. No. And then you have the Nubians. So they painted themselves and their cousins to the south, and of course to the right. And look at these pictures of who's the Nubian and who's the Egyptian. They're mixed in there. Again, let's go quickly. Okay. This is what I talk about. Per-ab means king, pharaoh. Let's go on. Okay, Nefertari. Nefer means beautiful. Tari means beloved one. That's the great, she's the wife of Ramses II, because the Egyptian pharaohs would take Nubian wives, and she was the one, the number one. All right, well, I'm gonna stop it here, and I hope you find these in books. All right, Black Man in Nile. And until next time, peace, Hotep, bye-bye.